Hello, hello. Andryanna here. Thank you for tuning in to this episode where we are looking at a fresh take on balance. You've heard the word, I talk about it a lot, and I can't wait to hear what my guest has in store for us and what her fresh take is as a business coach, as a host of the wildly popular podcast, The Business of Thinking Big. Lianne Kim is my guest today, and she is the founder of Mamas and Co., a community for mama entrepreneurs, as well as the author of the best-selling book, Building a Joyful Business. Lianne is on a mission to help women make a great living on their own terms, doing what they love. In today's episode, we are going to be talking about where she got her start with her business and her journey in entrepreneurship, how she looks at balance, and hint it is not having everything being equal at all times, as well as some advice that she has for us about how we can find more joy in our careers, in our business, and truly having a joyful life. It's such a beautiful conversation. So let's just dive right in. Hey, I'm Andryanna, and this is the Juggle is Real podcast. As I share my ongoing journey from experiencing burnout to leading a more mindful and intentional life with better balance, I hope you feel seen, that you realize your worth, lighten your load, and prioritize your own needs. As we hear from leading experts and well-known faces in the wellness, entrepreneurship, education, and motherhood space, I hope you gain insights, proven practices, and learn actionable tools to help you enjoy the juggle of work, family, and everything in between with a little less stress and a lot more ease, joy, and fun. Most of all, I hope you find what you need to simplify, streamline, and supercharge your own journey of better balance and self-love. Are you with me? Let's get started. Lianne, welcome to The Juggle is Real. So happy to be sitting down with you. Thank you so much for being here. How are you doing?
Oh my gosh. It's busy right now, but I'm loving it. Honestly, we're heading into our big event later on in the autumn. And so for me, it's our favorite time of year, but it's also really busy. And yeah, I can't complain.
I think so many of us are in this boat right now, and that's why I'm so glad to be chatting with you because the fall season is just it's jam packed and a lot of it is such great things and we're back to extracurriculars in school and the work calendar is just filling up and like you mentioned we've got MamaCon coming up on the horizon and we want to talk about that. But before we do, I think that the listeners are really going to be interested in hearing your fresh take on balance and how we can apply some of these strategies and mindset techniques that you can share with us. Before we get into all of that juicy stuff, I would love to get to know you a little bit better. I see you on social media and you're doing such incredible things, and you've really accomplished so much as a business coach and a podcast host, and you're the founder of Mamas and Co. Can you share with us a little bit about your journey and how your background in business and your experience as a mom has led you to where you are and sitting with us today?
Absolutely. So I always say I was a total accidental entrepreneur. I never had any intention of working for myself. I was a good employee. And then I had two babies and started a side hustle and a dream to eventually quit my job. Once I had my kids, priorities shift, as I'm sure
Mhm.
you can appreciate. And I just didn't feel that same alignment with what I was doing. In short, I was making a couple of very wealthy men even wealthier. And I was kind of tired of it, to be honest with you. So I thought,
Mhm.
what if I could take these sales skills that I've gained over the last 10 plus years and help smaller and growing businesses? So originally, I thought I would do more like sales consulting and training inside of small to medium sized businesses. But very quickly, I realized it was the mama entrepreneurs that really needed my help the most, that I really wanted to help the most. So, in between all this, I had started a little Facebook group for mama entrepreneurs. I posted in a couple of like local Facebook groups and I said, hey, are there any moms in here who have their own business and want to get together for a glass of wine and talk about business and family and life? And the response was huge. So in the early days, I did not call it a membership or community. I really didn't know what I was doing. All I knew was that there were a lot of women who were hungry for connection. And most of what we did back then was in person. I always tell the story. The first meetup was 7 women who came together in a snowstorm at a local pub near my house in East York. And it was phenomenal. Like I knew, I know this sounds crazy, but I knew even then that I was onto something. I didn't have a plan for a business at that time. I didn't have a plan to create a community. I just knew that there was a need here. So fast forward a couple of years later, I was able to quit my job. I was able to take the community from a free Facebook group to, a monetized, highly engaged group of women who were not only in the community, but also working together in my small group coaching programs. And it took on a life of its own, honestly. Mamas and Co was sort of the core of everything. And then, not long after that came the conference and other events. And there's a retreat that I run every year in the dead of winter so that women can just have these different ways of connecting with other women that are going through what they're going through. And it's that connection. I really thought it would be sort of like the business skills that everybody needed the most. And they do. They definitely do need to know how to sell and market themselves. But to be honest, it's that pure connection and that feeling like you have someplace you belong that really is the key to everything that we do.
So incredible. Kudos to you, first of all, because, to start a company, with really just beautiful intentions to serve and to support and to bring people together. I had Kat and Nat on the Juggle is Real last year, and I had organized an event a couple years ago where they were the keynotes, and it's really interesting because they sort of started their platform and all that they're doing now with the same intention. They had some other moms in their living room and they sort of had these little events, and it has grown so much. And so I think for many of us, we see beautiful organizations and communities like Mamas and Co. We see these conferences, we see these retreats, and we think, wow, I want to do that. And we don't necessarily realize that we've all had these small beginnings and these very humble starts that came with just an idea. So can you maybe share a little bit? We kind of understand what the early days looked like. How did you know it was something that you wanted to pursue full time? And then how did you make that leap? Because I'm sure, at some point you have to make the decision to kind of, stay where you are or take that leap. There's probably a little bit of fear there, maybe a terror barrier, something that, can hold us back. So can you share for you how you knew it was the right time and what that period looked like for you?
Absolutely. I remember it like it was yesterday. And I will also share that I recorded a full episode on my podcast years ago about how I actually made the leap step by step from idea to like first day as a self-employed person. So if you're okay with that, let's link to that in the show notes. But it's episode number 115 of my podcast, The Business of Thinking Big. And it's literally called How I Quit My 9 to 5. That's the long
Amazing.
version, but I will give you the short version. Um, Essentially, the community and the coaching that I was doing, it was always part-time. It was a side hustle. Um, and even sort of as I was doing it, I knew that there would come a day where I would be ready to make the leap and quit my job. Basically, from the time, so my kids are 2 years apart. And I had 1 year off maternity leave, which with each of those kids. My colleagues at my job used to joke that I was on the every other year plan because I would literally work for a year and take off for a year and work for a year and take off. And after the second year off, and having time with my little guy, I just knew, well, both my kids, but specifically once I had two, I really knew that my time was going to be better spent working for myself. Even if
Mhm.
I was making less money, but I had control over the how I worked and when I worked and with whom. So I had enough traction in my coaching business to know that I was onto something. I was good at selling. I was good at bringing in the right clients and putting them in the right programs. And I wasn't making 6 figures or anything close to that, But slowly my monthly revenue started to creep up so that I could see it was possible. It's not that I knew it would happen. It's that the signs pointed to, okay, if I keep going on this path and I keep doing what I'm doing and I have more time to put into this,
Mm,
I know it will grow. So it was part strategy, but honestly, it was probably like 80% blind faith and hustle. Like I was willing to figure it out to make it work. So, and I have to say, like, as an entrepreneur, if you're waiting for someone to hand you a blueprint or a step-by-step guide and exactly how to do it, like you might just be in the wrong line of work. I don't mean to sound like crude or callous, but the reality is, as an entrepreneur, the number one skill that you have to have is resourcefulness
mm,
and resilience. Like you have to be willing to put stuff out there and have it fail. You have to be willing to do sales calls and have people tell you no, right? You have to be willing to build offers and price those offers and then reprice those offers or readjust those offers as needed. Like it's you don't create something and then it's done and stagnant. You create something and you're always recreating it. You know, I've been selling primarily the same offers now for the last probably about 5 years, the same core offerings, but there's still tweaks that happen behind the scenes, and it took me a while to get to that. So I'm celebrating 8 years as a self-employed mama. And then we've been running the community for 2 years before that. So the community is actually celebrating 10 years in like a month, which is
wow.
really exciting. But but that's really the key is like when you see the signs that success is coming, don't wait for somebody to give you permission, and definitely don't wait until the side hustle's income has matched your day job because it probably won't. The reality is it's going to be really hard to match what you're making in a full-time salaried job while you're working that full-time salaried job. So
Yes.
you kind of have to know, like there just comes a point where the risk is worth it. And for me, a big part of what helps me feel comfortable. I do a lot of like target setting and sort of like financial projections. I'm always looking at the numbers. So I had those numbers and I had a lot of difficult conversations with my spouse. I honestly like the biggest thing for me, and this is if you're considering making the leap, this is the question you have to ask is like, what do I absolutely need to make this work? And for me, what I needed was I needed enough revenue so that my family would not feel any different than when I had a job. Like that was really it. And it's kind of it started as indescribable, but very quickly I attached a monetary figure to that so that I knew, okay, if I can make this much in the business, even though it's not the goal, if I can make this as a bare minimum, my family shouldn't even be able to feel that I'm no longer employed by a large company. They shouldn't even be able to feel the difference. And that happened. That exact same thing happened pretty quickly within the first 3 or 4 months. I hadn't matched my day job salary, but I was earning enough that the family didn't feel any different. We were still able to go on vacations. We were still able to, do the kinds of things we love to do as a family, make charitable donations. And that was really important to me. So for each of you listening, there's something that's really important to you, whether it's a financial safety net or whether it's a certain level of success that you've got to identify for yourself what you will need in order to make this work. And that was it for me. So once I figured that out, once I got the hubby on board and we'd have it had enough of those tough conversations, it was about kind of timing it right. And so I gave lots of notice and I made sure that I was leaving on good terms just in case. As I said to my husband, listen, if it doesn't work out, I'll go and get another sales job. I know I'm gainfully employed. I can get a job if I need to. And
Yes.
thankfully, 8 years later, we've never even looked back from that. But it was having that foresight and courage myself, but also like having the backing of a partner, whether it's your life partner or your bestie or your business bestie or even your kids, knowing that somebody is in your corner cheering you on makes all the difference.
Absolutely. And I mean, thank you for that because it does take a certain level of courage and it does take a certain level of sacrifice, right? Because you have to, in many cases, sacrifice something good for something that can be even better. Right. And I love the analogy. I'm not a big baseball person, but right, like in the sport of baseball, you give up, getting someone out at first base in order to get someone out at home plate, right? You're giving up first base so that you can get home, like that run batted in, right? You're sacrificing that. And when you're an entrepreneur, there is a level of sacrifice, and you really have to understand that and be comfortable with what that trade-off is. I think this ties into looking at work-life balance really well, because it's something that is talked about so often, and so many people have their own version of what it means and what work-life balance is and how it should be or what it should look like. And in my life, I mean, this is such a topic that is near and dear to my heart, as it is for you. So through the 10 years, congratulations, by the way, of having this community, through 8 years being full-time, a solo entrepreneur, a mama entrepreneur, in your experience with coaching women and seeing that traditional idea of balance evolve, especially for busy moms trying to grow a business, what has changed, or what have you learned through this process for yourself and also for the people that you're supporting?
Absolutely. This is a great question. So the first thing I'll say is I think the word balance gets a bad rap
Mm-hmm.
because somehow along the way, people started to think that it meant, equal. I'm
Yes.
spending equal amount of time on my work as I am my family. And I don't know about you, but I don't walk around all day with a stopwatch going, okay, how many minutes did I spend at my son's baseball game? And how many minutes did I spend, talking to that client? I've never been about that. One thing that I have, I would say probably that I'm the most proud of over the last 8 years was that my family always came before the business growth. And what I mean by that was that's not to say I compromised. I mean, I've grown a powerful business. We've generated millions of dollars, helped thousands of women, all over the world through our various programs and podcasts and books and all of that. But I always knew it would never come at the expense of the quality of life I wanted for me and my family. And when I say that, you'll notice that I said for me first,
Yay.
because
Yes.
I think honestly, it's that expression, happy wife, happy life. Like, I think it's true. I think if mama's happy, everybody can be so much happier. But when mama's not happy, everyone in the house feels it. And I've noticed that with my own kids. I struggle with seasonal depression, and I've noticed that when I'm having a season where I'm not feeling like my usual self, my family feels that. There's no way for me to pretend and lift others up around me if I'm feeling drained and depleted. So I think first thing, let's stop thinking that balance means you have to be doing it all equally well. Second thing, balance really starts with you from the inside out, making sure that you are doing the things that feel good for you. And this is the hardest part. I actually just had lunch with a girlfriend last week, and we were talking about this exact thing. Something that I'm really tuning into right now with every activity that I do is energetics. And I know that word is kind of tossed around a lot, but I'll give you an example. I get asked to do a lot of things and help a lot of people and speak on podcasts and things like that. And whenever I'm considering, is this a yes or a no? Very quickly in my mind, this is almost happening on autopilot. I ask myself, is this going to drain me or uplift me?
Mm.
And I say that because as a mother, as a wife, as a coach, a lot of my energy is going to people who need me. That means that a natural depletion of energy is happening over time. It doesn't mean that I don't love what I do, doesn't mean that I'm a bad coach. It just means like I'm a helper by
Mm-hmm.
profession, and also in my personal life. My primary role is a helper, which means that I don't have a lot of spare energy beyond what my family needs and what my clients' needs are. So I've really got to get clear for myself on those extras if it is something that I truly want to do. And it's not enough for me to say, like, oh, this will benefit the business. I hear women saying this a lot. Oh, I'm going to join this networking group because it will benefit the business. I'm going to go to this event, even though it's late and I don't really want to, and I'm an introvert, because it might benefit the business. Well, if it's not uplifting you, is it really worth it? Like, who cares? There's lots of things that you do every day that might benefit your business. And there might be a brand new idea waiting around the corner that you've never even explored that you might actually get excited by so much more than whatever it is that's leaving you feeling depleted. So this is a work in progress. I've been doing this all my life. I think I've always been someone who is very protective of her energy because I am an extrovert. I am. I love being on stages. I love speaking. I love moving and helping people. But I also need an immense amount of time to restore. And so for me, restorative activities right now look like hot yoga. They look like I love reading on my Kindle. I take a lot of long walks around my neighborhood with like a podcast in my earbuds. But, 6 months from now, those might not be the things that I find restorative. And they could very easily become things that I find draining if we're not careful. So, looking at not just your personal life, but your social life, your me time, your charitable endeavors, or your volunteer work. A lot of mamas listening to this might be helping with the school and the PTA, and I know this because I coach women just like you. And then they'll
Mhm.
say to me, "Oh, I signed up for this thing at my kid's school, but it's just really feeling arduous, but I feel obligated." That's a
Mhm.
key. Whenever you notice yourself saying, I feel like this is an obligation, it means that it's not lighting you up. Because I have obligations in my life, but I don't call them that because I also really love them, right? Spending time with my mother is an obligation, but I've made sure over the last couple of years that when we hang out, we're actually doing things we both enjoy. So we go to like the arts and crafts shows together, or we'll go and see a show. And I'm intentional about making sure that my commitments don't feel like commitments. They feel like things that I'm choosing. I think that's you know, another thing I will remind you is like everywhere you're spending your time and energy is a choice. It may not feel like a choice, but it absolutely 90% of the things on your calendar are choices, and they're not things that you are forced to do. So remember that, and give yourself permission to choose again. If something is, falling into that it's draining me category and not into that it's lifting me higher or it's fueling me category, give yourself permission to choose again. Maybe it's time to take that off the calendar, even just for a little bit until things shift or improve.
Yes, this is all music to my ears because this is so much of what I have learned sometimes the hard way, and what I think is really important that we continually remind ourselves about. And so just having that very quick question, is this going to drain me? Is this going to lift me up, light me up? We typically know the answer right away, and making that decision quickly. Sometimes we like, oh, okay, maybe, or I'll let you know. And then that idea really just weighs on us. And there's so much. And when we talk about the invisible load and the mental load of motherhood and entrepreneurship and just life in general, all these little energetic leaks of I have to get back to that person, or I said yes to this, but I'm going to cancel, or I don't feel like it. It really adds up, and it can be a huge, huge weight off our shoulders when we can ask ourselves this in the moment. Typically, we really do know in that moment, and we could make the decision quickly. So thank you for that incredible and really, really important reminder to continually ask ourselves this, and to know that there are different seasons. And when we feel like we have more capacity, we can say yes to more things. And we can, join the PTA, or we can sign up for other things and have more on our calendar, or go to those evening events. And then there will be times when we have less capacity, and it's absolutely okay to say no and to really protect our energy. I think that's something that is really a huge takeaway from what your message really is, because you talk a lot about building a joyful business and a joyful life. I'd love to just focus on this a little bit, because I don't know, somewhere along the line, I think once we have children and we have a career and we feel like we're on a certain trajectory, our needs easily fall by the wayside. And those things that really spark joy in us can be the first things to be put on hold. Can you talk to us about how joy plays into the equation when we're trying to look for better balance in our lives? What advice would you have for women who may be struggling to find that joy or who have put things on hold because they feel like they're being pulled in so many directions?
This is such a great question. And I mean, I did write a book called Building a Joyful Business for a reason. And it was because, I wrote it during the pandemic. But honestly, the problem that I wrote it in order to solve existed long before that, which is women would run their businesses for a year or two or three, and then very slowly over time, the weight of and the responsibility of running a business, raising a family, especially if you're doing both of those things, the weight became heavy. And I was seeing women basically wanting to drop out of being entrepreneurs because it no longer felt like the thing they were passionate about in the beginning. And that's normal. Like I want to normalize that too, because I think that happens in every relationship, right? It happens in a marriage. I am no longer the same type of how do I want to say this? I the feelings that I have for my husband are still very strong, but they're not those like lustful feelings you feel on, dates one, two, and three. They change over time. And your business is exactly like another relationship in your life. And in the beginning, there's fire and excitement and everything's new and fresh. And then you hit this sort of like plateau where things are kind of normal and you're in a rhythm. And
Mm-hmm.
then, if you're on the path that most of my women end up on, is that normal slowly becomes boring and it slowly becomes a grind and it no longer feels joyful. So I say this because I think whenever this happens to people, they think that there's something wrong with them or their business, and there totally is not. Like all of us are going to fall out of love with our business at some point, or at least most of the women I know have at some point. And that doesn't mean you're going to stay there forever. So when I think about a joyful business, I really am talking about having a joyful life first, making time for the things that you actually like to do. And I'll give a great example. I'll have women say, you know, I've actually had women who've coached with me over years, and they'll be saying the same thing for years. I want to make time to work out more. I want to make time for my own personal wellness, for my own personal fitness. And this will go on forever until they make it a priority. And the number one reason why people don't do this is they'll say, well, I don't have the time, right? I don't have the time. I'm too busy. But working out for most of these women would actually provide them with more energy. It would actually provide them with more focus so that when they actually sat down to work every morning, they would get more done and they'd be inspired. So we have to really look at where we're saying we don't have time and what are we choosing to do with that time instead. I know when my kids were very little, I had to ask my husband if he would watch them for 20 minutes while I went for a run around the block first thing, because if I didn't do it, it wouldn't happen. 20 minutes a day, 5 days a week adds up to almost 2 hours of activity with just making that one tiny commitment. I'm going to put on my running shoes. I'm going to go run around the block while my husband is watching the kids, while the kids are eating breakfast. Nobody needs me right now. Right. And I have found the person or the support or the resource to get this done. So when we do things like deprive our own self of activities that we know are going to feel good, we're actually creating this vicious cycle where we're telling ourselves we don't deserve it. And that's a very dangerous place to be, because it starts with one or two things. And before long, what I found was I was blaming my kids. I was saying, oh, I wish I could do X, but I can't because I'm a mother. Well, that's not really true, A. And B, it's not very fair to them either. Like, that's not why I became a mother, to use them as an excuse to not do things. So we have to be careful of the stories we tell ourselves. And then in my book, I do talk a lot about the choices that we make within the business that will create more joy. The first one is Am I choosing to work with clients that I actually like? Am I
Mhm.
actually choosing true dream clients, or am I settling for less than that? And so often people are settling for okay, when who they really want to serve is out there and they need them. So I talk all about how we do this, how we choose the right clients. I talk a lot about, building an appropriate work schedule for ourselves. When we work in a 9 to 5 for somebody else, it's really easy. They tell us we're working 9 to 5 and those are the hours we work. But when we work for ourselves, again, like we get to choose. So when my kids were little, we would have them in daycare before and after school because I wanted to work. I loved it. I was building a business. I was still fairly new. I really enjoyed and I liked being able to work until 5 p.m. if that's what I chose to do. Now my kids aren't so little. They've aged out of daycare. And also I want that time with them when they're home from school. So now my workday is like 8:30 to 3:30. And I get to change that anytime I wish. It does take a little bit of planning, and I've got to get the team on board, of course, and things like that. I've got to adjust my calendar availability, but it's worth it because that's a way that I can feel more joy. If I know that, at 3:30 I get to shut down and have a conversation with my kids about their day, I'm going to choose that over staring at my inbox for another hour. Like, like it really is balance, joy, all of it. It's all about the choices that we're making. And I think a lot of us forget that the choice is ours. We're waiting for, we're so conditioned that these, um, these things are coming from an employer or a spouse or a parent figure or somebody like that who sort of tells us what to do. But when you run your own business, you get to be your own boss. So do you want to be a great boss? Or do you want to be a tyrant boss who rules with an iron fist? Again, the choice is yours.
I love that you're saying this is all about choice, and it's so true. And sometimes we don't feel that. Sometimes we feel like we're trapped within the confines of our own making, right? And so I love that you're saying we can give ourselves the permission to make it what we want it to be. And I also really appreciate that you said I my children were in daycare before and after school because that's what I wanted, and that was what worked best for me. And that's what allowed you the capacity to then, after daycare, you knew that you had finished whatever was on your plate with your business, and you could focus on your kids, and you weren't trying to do both, or you weren't spreading yourself too thin. Because I think there's a lot of guilt and a lot of expectations that we place on ourselves, again, all about the choices that we make about what is a good mom or a good entrepreneur or a good colleague or a good friend or a good wife. And there's a lot of shoulding that happens. So for the women listening today who are maybe feeling a bit overwhelmed, the idea of choice seems very out of the ordinary. What can we do? What are some small shifts that we can make to help us start moving towards a more sustainable way of living with more joy, of leading, of working, and how we can make those choices? What are some small shifts that might be initial steps that we can take?
Well, the first thing that I would recommend is start your day with something that fuels you. So for
Mm-hmm.
me, that's definitely movement. My physical wellness is very important to me, primarily because it impacts my mental wellness, if I can be completely honest. That's the number one reason why I choose to prioritize working out over other things. But if that's not uplifting to you, if that feels like a chore, that's fine. I would choose something that you would look forward to doing every morning before your family gets up, before you're needed by other people. This might actually be, for some of you, if you're working from home, this might be the moment everybody leaves the house and you can just have 5 minutes of quiet to yourself. Studies have shown that when we start the day off right, the day tends to continue to go in that direction. So if we're starting the day with stress and overwhelm and inbox and text messages, I mean, we're going to feel inundated for the rest of the day. But even just by taking 5 minutes, I'm a big journaler. I do at least 5 minutes of gratitude journaling every morning. I actually do this. I have a strange family dynamic in that there's two of us that love sleeping in, and then there's two of us that wake up early, and me and my son wake up early. And so I just do this quietly while he kind of snuggles on the couch beside me. I'll put on some music on my Calm app and I'll open up my journal and I literally just say things I am grateful for today. And I just start listing them off. 5 minutes a day, even 2 minutes of gratitude journaling to start your day could have a massive impact on how you feel throughout your day. And I would say, along those lines is how are you ending your day? Could you spend 2 minutes doing some deep breathing? And again, with every breath in, can you think of one thing that you're grateful for? Or better yet, something positive that happened in your day? So some days, like yesterday is a great example of this. Yesterday, I got some tough news in the morning, and I had something go wrong with a project that we're working on. And I could very easily have written off the day and said, okay, well, it's just a bad day. But later in the day, I got some good news from a partner that I'm working with. And then later on, I got an interview request, and the good stuff started to roll in too. So it's important to acknowledge the good so much more than we acknowledge the bad, but we spend a lot of mental time thinking about what's not working and we call it, strategizing. Well, I'm just trying to figure out a plan. But it's really just worry in disguise. So, I would say, how are you starting your day? How are you ending your day? Can you set a timer and give yourself 2 minutes of positive energy at each end of the day so that you continue to stay on that plane of joy, abundance, happiness, because it makes all the difference. The second thing I would say is block time for filling your own cup. Don't assume these things are going to happen organically on their own. I really started doing this probably as far back in my 20s when I realized that I had certain things that were really important to me, but they were getting kind of pushed aside. So for you, that might be once a week, you go for a walk with a girlfriend. And it's your social time, it's also your outdoor time, it's also your nature time, and it's your movement time, right? So, and that would be tip number 3. Can you start to combine some of these things that you find uplifting? If you love listening to, mindset podcasts and you also need to get your movement in, can you combine those two things? Right? And kill two birds with one stone. This is something that I think some people do naturally and other people have to kind of think about it. But when you start layering these things together, block it off in your calendar and make sure that whoever might need you knows you're not available. We have a rule in our house. If it's not in the calendar, it's not happening. So, and we're a single car family right now at the moment too, which means that if my husband wants to take my son to the driving range, but I need to take the car to my hot yoga class, we've got a problem. So, and it's first come, first serve, unless it's something special. But for the most part, I block it off on our family calendar. I also indicate with a little emoji if I'm going to need the car for that thing. It's in there as if it were like a doctor's appointment. And when I say doctor, I mean like a specialist appointment that you might wait months for. I treat it as if it's an appointment, and it is. It's an appointment with myself. It's an appointment with my highest self, and that's really who I care to be. So I always think like if you want to have an extraordinary life, then you have to do the things that most people aren't doing. Most people are not going to the gym 3 times a week. Most people are not making sure they are hydrating enough. They're not getting enough sleep. They're not blocking off time for self-care. So all of you are listening to this are probably thinking about doing these things, and it feels like it's really arduous, but the execution is actually pretty simple. Think about that one step. I'm going to take 10 seconds and I'm going to pop this item in my calendar. And then I'm going to set a reminder for myself. You can all do this from your iPhones or whatever in like literally 10 seconds. And then when you do that, of course, you have to hold yourself accountable to doing the thing. But that's where it starts. It's not going to start because somebody's invited you. It's not going to start because somebody's given you permission or offered to watch your children. It starts with you being resilient and resourceful, getting clear about what's uplifting to you, and then making it an actual priority, making a commitment to doing that thing. And I could go on and on about how this applies to business too, but honestly, these little choices that we make, these little commitments to self, they are the answer to everything. They're the answer to having more time to work on what you love, having more mental focus, being able to get more yeses in your discovery calls, being able to grow your revenue. As an entrepreneur, your revenue has no limit except the limits that you put on it by yourself, for yourself. So, anyway, I could go on, but I hope that is somewhat helpful and maybe a place to start.
And I could listen as you go on because this is just so helpful. So thank you for sharing. I love the concept of bookending. My morning ritual is like so sacred to me. And for the past few years, it's been really an anchor. And I think ending our day, celebrating those small wins, setting the tone for the evening and how we will sleep, and what we're impressing on our subconscious, and really how that then fuels the next day. I also love how you're scheduling yourself in and making yourself a priority. I like to say that we have to put ourselves on our own to-do list, and I love that you're doing that and encouraging other people to do that as well. We were earlier speaking about MamaCon that is happening. It's coming up
Yeah.
November 8th, and it's in Toronto, Canada. Can you share what is MamaCon, or what can we expect this year? And why is this such an incredible and valuable event, especially for female and mama entrepreneurs?
Oh my gosh, where do I begin?
Yeah.
Well, it literally is the most fun day you will ever have as a mama entrepreneur. And it started with the idea of what if we could give women permission to leave their kids and their business and their jobs and their partners for one day and just focus on them. And literally, this was the origin story from way back when we had the first one back in 2016. It was like, what if we could bring a handful of women together for the day? And since that time, the event has grown and grown and grown to 200 women. We have it at the Globe and Mail Center in Toronto on the 17th floor, overlooking the CN Tower. It is like the most inspiring venue. And, like most business conferences, there's really great speakers, there's networking, but there's something more than that we do. And I just, all I can say is we have people who come for the first time. We have a lot of first timers at every event that we do. We have at least half the room is there for the first time. And they always say there's just something magical about this particular group of women. They're really interested in helping other people grow and succeed as well. So for me, I've been to a ton of networking events that felt really stiff and stale and dry. And I was just sort of taking notes and listening to speakers go on, mostly male speakers about stuff that I really wasn't all that interested in. So we feature stories of real mom entrepreneurs who have built successful businesses, and they talk about how they did it. And they walk you through exercises on how you can do it too. It's very interactive, really, really. The number one word that I always say is it's welcoming. If you've never been to anything like this, if you're a first time entrepreneur, or if you're still at the side hustle stage, it's one of the most welcoming environments I can even imagine. We really pride ourselves on that. So you you do have to be a mom. You do not have to be a business owner yet. We have people from the idea stage all the way through to multiple years and multiple decades in business. We have women of all walks of life, all different industries, ages, and stages of business. It really is just such an incredible day. And it's happening, as you said, Friday, November 8th at the Globe and Mail Center in Toronto, Canada. And we do have a little prezi for your listeners if you're interested.
Hey,
If
tell
you'd
us,
like to
tell us.
if you would like to join us for the first time, we are offering $20 off with the promo code FIRST20. So this is ideal for people who've never been to our conference before but want to check it out for the first time. If you go to mamasandco.com/mamacon and then you enter the promo code FIRST, FIRST 20, you will save $20 on your ticket. And it's already a great
Wow.
price. So just come
Yes.
Come
Come
play with us
enjoy.
for the day.
This sounds so much fun. And of course, I'm going to put the link in the notes for the podcast episode so that the listener can find it. Click right through and make sure you enter that promo code FIRST20 for $20 off. This has been such a beautiful conversation, Lianne. I'm so grateful for your time, that you're giving your energy to us and sharing so much of this beautiful wisdom. one final piece of advice or a journal prompt or a little tip or nugget that you would like to share with us about how we can re-examine balance in our lives? Any final advice to part?
I was just sharing this in one of my mastermind groups the other day. The question, what do I really want?
Mm,
Ask yourself that question. Ask it early, ask it often. Don't be afraid to revisit it. Don't be afraid if what comes up is not what you expected. Lord knows my life looks very different than it did a decade ago. But whenever I feel like I'm not where I want to be or I'm falling off course, I just journal or do some visualization on that question. What do I really want? Bring it back to you. Bring it back to the life you're trying to create for yourself. And if you start from that place, only magic can happen from there.
magic. And yeah, and allow yourself to hear what comes up, right? Like so much of this is the permission and having the choice. So beautiful. Thank you
It's so
so
true.
much for your time today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Well, I can only speak for myself, but this conversation with Lianne has been so uplifting, not at all draining. And I hope that whether you have been listening while driving or walking or doing things around the house or taking a moment with your feet up, that you've gained some new insight, that you've gotten those reminders or those nuggets that you may have needed to hear, and that you've blocked out some space for yourself, whether it be in the morning, before bed, or during your week. I know things are busy. I know it's a hectic season, but when we can really prioritize our needs, allow ourselves to choose us and our needs and put ourselves on the to-do list, magic truly happens, just like Lianne said. Don't forget about MamaCon happening November 8th in Toronto. It is going to be such an incredible event. And the $20 off promo code that Lianne offered is such an incredible value for what this event's going to be. So you can check out the link in the notes for this podcast episode to learn more and to grab your ticket. It's been such a blast sharing this with you. Please share with a friend, someone who could use this information and hear the message that Lianne has to share. Please subscribe, rate this podcast, and write me a short and sweet review in Apple Podcasts. That's what allows other people to find it and get them this important information as well. I can't wait to see you here for another episode of The Juggle is Real. Until then, take good care.